A stalemate between Maresca's Chelsea and Arteta's Arsenal at the bridge, as they remain locked on points. And it was a real tactical duel, and we saw the tactical fingerprints of both managers make the difference in both of the goals. So let's take a look at the tactics, beginning with Chelsea on the ball. What we saw from Chelsea was a classic 3-2 shape in the build-up, with Cucurella being the deepest of the fullbacks, and Gusto in contrast was hyper-aggressive, moving into the right-hand half space, with Palmer occupying the left-hand half space, giving Maresca the midfield box that he loves, and there was a distinct reason for this. By default, Arsenal have a midfield 3, so that box would have given them the 4 versus 3 advantage. But Chelsea were hoping for so much more than this, because it's well known that out of possession, Arsenal love to defend in a 4-4-2, with Odegaard often joining Havertz, so that the shape looks more like this. So now there's the potential for that 3 versus 2 to extend into a 4 versus 2 in the midfield. However, Arteta was aware of this, so he already knew how he would get around this problem. And that's because for large portions of this game, that 4-4-2 was not aggressive in the press, and Havertz and Odegaard as much as possible would look to prioritize cutting off the midfield double pivot, which would then allow Rice and Partey to take on their men deeper in the half spaces. For all the talk of tactics, this is where we see the importance of the individual quality of the players, because Colwill and Fofana had ways around this, in different ways as well. Because with Fofana, we saw him be a progressive ball carrier, so whenever he got the ball, he was looking to push into the midfield as much as possible. And what getting into these positions would mean for Chelsea is that either Havertz would have to come deep to close him down, opening up potential space in the midfield for the remaining pivot, or now Rice would be drawn, thus opening up potential space for the likes of Gusto and Palmer to look to find between the lines. And while Fofana's progressive carrying was amazing, what I want to focus on is Colwill's progressive passing, because that also made a difference. And that's because, as discussed, when Arsenal weren't pressing, Partey was able to monitor Palmer much more closely, but we saw Palmer still look to drop deeper into these left-hand spaces. And Partey would follow, but the combination of Colwill having accurate, piercing passing, as well as Palmer's touch, meant that he could receive even in these super tight spaces and get past Partey, and this opened up opportunities, because now Palmer could find Neto, who would get into 1 versus 1 with Ben White, and we saw Neto's excellent dribbling ability lead into danger throughout the 90. But alternatively, if it wasn't Neto having luck, now if Palmer did manage to get past Partey, he had the space to get higher up to look for shots or crosses, although it wasn't Palmer's finest day in front of goal. So that's all well and good, but where things really got interesting for Chelsea was when they were able to lure Arsenal into the press. That's because, like any good pressing unit, when either Odegaard or Havertz would look to lead the press, the rest of the side was expected to back this up, primarily through Rice and Partey. So now what situations like this meant is that Palmer, once again, off that left-hand side, would truly have the space to drop deeper, and when he got the opportunity to get past Partey, he was never coming back, and we saw him looking to attempt shots, as well as his usual creative passing from those zones. But today, Arsenal were able to get away with it. But once again, Colwill's amazing passing was a big factor, because in situations like this, when Rice was also drawn to Caicedo, Gusto's positioning in the right-hand half space made him extremely difficult to find. However, we saw just how lethal Colwill's passing ability can be, as on more than one occasion he was able to attempt that riskier pass into Gusto, and now we began to see another key factor of Maresca's tactics. And that key factor is the 2 versus 1 against Jurrien Timber. Because even when Rice was looking to cover Gusto, Gusto is more than pacey enough that when he was able to find Madueke out wide, he could make a lung-busting run into the half space and get on the end of it and then look to cross to his teammates in the box. But what we also saw is that movement from Gusto alone would be enough to get Jurrien Timber to be more reluctant to get touch-tied to Madueke, and this would then allow crosses to come into the box, which could lead to dangerous situations. And for Chelsea's goal, we see some poor pressing from Arsenal, as off of the set piece, we see Havertz neither commits to pressing or to covering the pivot space where Neto breaks into, which he would have done in a more set situation. So this leads to Neto having the time and space to unleash an excellent shot from range. So that was Chelsea in possession. But while this wasn't vintage Arsenal, we did see some shades of recovery from Arteta, so let's take a look at their tactics. And here's the thing, Much like Chelsea, Arsenal were looking to build in a back three, and this had a much different effect on the Chelsea press. Arsenal's back three could be made up of Timber staying deeper in the left-hand side, Declan Rice dropping in if Timber was looking to be more aggressive, or Thomas Partey moving in when the centre-backs were looking to split. And here we actually see some more defensive similarities between the two, because much like Arsenal, Chelsea wanted to defend in a 4-4-2, with the attacking midfielder, Palmer in this case, joining the forward. But, particularly when Ben White was the third centre-back, the difference came in Neto's behaviour on the press, as he was hyper-aggressive whenever the right centre-back or whoever was positioned there got onto the ball, jumping the line and looking to win it as quickly as possible. But this had some serious dangers for Chelsea downstream, as with Saka tying up Cucurella, Odegaard identified this space where the right back would have been as the ideal place to get onto the ball and begin to dictate the game. Cucurella quickly found himself in a similar predicament Timber did on the far side, because whenever Neto was caught high up the pitch, he found himself 2 versus 1 against Odegaard and Saka, and this caused huge issues, because with Havertz's movement, often slightly deeper, drawing the attention of the centre-back, we saw Odegaard being hyper-aggressive in looking to make that half-space run, and dragging Cucurella with him more often than not. So what this meant is that Saka now had the ability to receive in these situations, and what this could lead to is Saka going down the line and then looking to get a cross in, or much like Madueke, if Saka had that space, he was more than capable of delivering dangerous whipping crosses into the box, and we saw them have a lot of luck at the back post. And I should rephrase, because the back post was in luck, as this was part of Arteta's tactic that almost won them the game. As the game wore on, Arteta quickly identified this region as where Arsenal could win and lose the game. And a lot of this was dictated through the use of Jurrien Timber, who was hyper-aggressive, and was happy to hold the width or move into the half space. Either way, with the Chelsea double pivot tied up on Rice and Partey, it meant that there was often a man in the half space free, and this could be made even worse by Kai Havertz also moving along, trying to exaggerate that difference. So essentially, overloading the left-hand half space was a big tactic for Arsenal. Because if they had a situation such as this with Madueke pressing higher, it presented the opportunity for a third-man runner to get in on the end of a long ball. And I should mention that the fluidity of Arsenal was a big factor, because Rice and Timber could also easily rotate positions. So we often saw Rice breaking into the box late. And actually this was a big factor, particularly when the ball was with Saka on the far side. Because as Chelsea were dragged across, what it often meant is that Gusto found himself 2 versus 1 down at the back post. So whenever the cross did come in, he couldn't afford to stay on the widest man, because that would allow the half-space runner to get on the end of the cross. But whenever he did come narrow, if he wasn't able to cut off the ball here, now the winger would be able to receive. And of course, we saw this perfectly for the goal, as it's Odegaard on the ball, and you can see that Gusto is overloaded at the back post. And this leads to a great finish for Martinelli. I should mention that Madueke, when he wasn't pressing up here, was actually quite disciplined in tracking back, and this actually gave Chelsea chances on the counter-attack, because whenever Arsenal were pressing higher with the ball, when the Blues won it back, Jackson was consistently making this run behind the centre-back and getting on the end of the through ball. And in fact, Chelsea were getting into plenty of dangerous situations, but were just never able to fully make it count. All square in the end, but I'm curious to know what you made of this match, and leave your ratings for both managers down in the comments below. And for your next video, check this one out, a tactical comparison of Pep the player and Sergio Busquets. Click on screen now.